we were people who valued joy. As crazy as it was, as stupid as it was all the dumb stuff that there was, I'm sure we didn't get to the airport without driving there. All of the stories, all of the vague memories that go with that particular trip, come rushing back to me today as I'm thinking about that, and just, tears in my eyes and how much he has added to my life.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety. My emotional sobriety, Dr. Alan Berger's emotional sobriety, your emotional sobriety. We're here again, and Alan, this is a big day, big weekend for you. You're moving, right?
Oh, Lord knows I need some emotional sobriety.
I mean, it's being put to the test.
Oh, I did this whole publishing this book. I'll tell you, Tom. You know some of the behind the scenes on this. Yeah. Somebody up there might be thinking, well, he wrote this book. Let's see if he can actually apply these principles in his life. And
we go, oh, no, totally different. That'll be another book down the line. When I learned how to read my own book, I'm sure you're being faced with because one of the things that I always say is anybody can have a good day on a good day, and the other piece is you're going through positive stress, and
that's right.
But one of the things that I notice that people will do, they'll feel guilty when they're feeling a lot of stress with positive stress, going like, no, that's real stress. It's like you do, now if you tend to be like me and have come from a long line of negative thinkers, you have to be really careful about not dropping back into acting like something, you're being victimized by somebody who's making you have this wonderful change in your life. But it is good to remember that this is something that I want to do and that we're excited about. But no, moving is hard.
Oh, moving. But look, that is an essential point that you and I talk about a lot, is that when I do things because I want to do them, then I'm grounded, at least that I've got a better stance to absorb all of the stress that's going to come from like this decision to move back to Pennsylvania. I want to do this. I've decided to do this. I've been sad about doing it. I've had all these different things. It's interesting. I just thought when you said, this is a positive stress, when I was in graduate school, stress, looking at stressful life events is the way this title of this book was. And these were the guys that did the research about correlating stress to illnesses, right? Mm-hmm. Chronic illnesses, all kinds of different issues. And they did the research just along the lines that you talked about, is they had a scale where they rated stressors in our life. Mm-hmm. Mild stressors were things like you're late to get to your doctor's appointment, for example. Mm-hmm. That got a rating between 0 and 20, let's say. Mm-hmm. Getting married, 90 points on the stress scale.
Wow.
Getting a new job that you love, 90 points. Because what they said was that anything that moves you from your homeostasis, whether it's in a positive direction or negative, is stressful because you're off that baseline.
Mm-hmm. Because human beings do not do not do well with change. Even if it's change, we seek and are pursuing. It's like, and and that's part of compassion for ourselves to realize, we still need to do the cognitive part of reframing that stuff and being sure that we are seeing the positive of that stuff. But it's not, that doesn't happen automatically. Our default settings don't change. Yeah. It's like the reflex is still the same. And I believe that particular setting is let me look it up. Here it is. Oh shit.
Oh, shit. But you know what you said, you're right, because see, we naturally want to go back to our equilibrium. I mean, that's the state that we want to go.
Of course
to.
we do. Yeah.
You know, and that makes sense. It's not that, see, I love to think of it that way, because it's not that we're resistant to change. It's just that we're wired to establish an equilibrium. So whenever you start to create that change, whatever it is, positive or whatever negative issue, you're going to be off that baseline you're on. And like you said, we can have some compassion towards ourselves and to just embrace that. Look, even though this is something I want, it can still be stressful for me. It
right. Well, and what we're part of what we're changing is we're changing the definition of our terms. For stress has the word stress has a negative connotation across the board. Not necessarily. It's just something that is. It's not taking stress personally is part of what this whole thing is about. And you say we not resist change. It's like, well, we do. This is where it comes down to language. Yeah, we resist change, but what you and I talk about is let's understand why we resist change, how that process works. Because again, the word resistance, especially in our business, has a very negative connotation with a lot of our colleagues. And I always say, like, if you're complaining about your client being resistant, that is like, being an oncologist complaining that your patients have cancer. It's like, no, this is what we address.
But that's how absurd it is. I mean, it really is that absurd. I mean,
you clear that cancer up, you come back, and we will talk.
And then we can help you. Go ahead and look how many people are thrown out of treatment programs for that very reason.
Oh God, I know.
I mean, this is one of the things, and I know it drove you crazy, just like it drives me crazy when I'm training staff and they want to label someone as the problem, or they're not ready to get well. Well, I'd rather think of it as I'm not so sure how to meet them to stoke their fires that would get them interested.
Right. Well, it's the Richard Bandler quotation that we refer to often, which is no such thing as resistant clients, only inflexible therapists. Yeah. And it's and I mean, I think that the idea that is what we treat. That's why I wrote that the recovery decision manuscript that I've shared with you some is because it's about helping people through their own resistance. Yeah. It's like, because the idea, rather than being in that old model, which is the therapist in the treatment program represents, basically we're supposed to sell recovery. Yes. And we're supposed to meet the objections and talk the client into recovery. And clients, a lot of times, but not just in treatment centers, but I see them in therapy that way, where they kind of come in with that expectation. I'm sure you've gotten this a lot, but through the years I have people go like, well, I was referred to you because somebody said you'd see through my bullshit. And I go like, okay, well, why would I need to see your bullshit? Why don't you just tell me what it is what's going on? And it's like they come in kind of set up for this game, and I'm going like, well, let's do it differently.
Fritz Perls, who's the founder of Gestalt Therapy, when he'd sit down with someone for the first time, he says, look, I'm going to save you some money and some time. Because if there's a part of you that wants to come in and prove to me how smart you are and how stupid I am, you don't have to do that. I know I'm stupid already. So we can cut through that bullshit and let's just talk about what's going on that you need help with.
Skip about the first 6 months of therapy right there. It's like just fast forward. That is amazing.
That is amazing.
Well, I tell you what, Alan, I could use some therapy today.
All right, go. Let's do it.
And I think watch this. I can make it fit into our podcast because it is about emotional sobriety and it's interesting because I'm sitting here. Let me see if I can nutshell this. It's like I'm sitting here in a witness position with two friends today. One is you, who is going through this change we're talking about now, and including, everything that's happening with your new book, your new publishing company, your all this amazing stuff happening, your new move, your wonderful family. And my other friend, I just got a text from his wife, one of my very best friends in Dallas, Texas, is now back home from the hospital, and hospice is at his home because he's dying of pancreatic cancer. Wow. and it's just that I just got that information. I realized I was walking upstairs to do this. And I was thinking, there's no way I'm not going to talk about this because it's just right there on my heart. And but you know, I got to tell you though, through this year of walking through this stuff with emotional sobriety with you has certainly given me some new stuff and reminded me of some old stuff. I sent a message back to thank his wife and he and I, we text like little teenage girls, back and forth. We have for years and I haven't heard, and I realized I've been texting him and he stopped wanting to talk on the phone. We did some FaceTime stuff for a while, but he stopped wanting to do that. He's in a lot of pain. So therefore some medication, pain management. And I looked back and realized my own denial when I realized he was with hospice. I looked and I said, oh shit, it was almost a month that he didn't respond to any of my texts, and except for one text he sent me last week, which was because I just basically pleaded with him, please just let me hear from you. And he just sent a text that said, I'm here. And so I just sent him back a text now, just basically I see that I'm here is still true, and here that it's not going to be for long. And so I just told him, I'm not going to stop texting you. It's like, you don't have to read them. You don't have to get them. You don't have to respond to them. But it's like, it's therapy for me to do that. And so I just wrote him a long text about what he means to me. So anyway, I'll stop. I don't have any end to that whole paragraph because it does occur to me that I'm watching these two very intensive experiences with two very good friends, very close friends, people I love very much. And it's like, and I am simultaneously absolutely celebrating with you and grieving for myself and grieving for my friend. Tom, his name's Tom also.
Well, tell us about Tom. When did you meet him? What does he mean to you?
He was, I met, and we'll call him Wellfeld because that's what I call him. So it's like, we never gotten, we were college friends. So we never used our first names ever, I don't think. So I was, for many years, I was Rut. That was it. I wasn't even in my full last name. I was just, for all those people, I'm just Rut, and he's Wellfeld, and hilarious man. And I met him. He's 2 years older than me. So back in those days when I went to college, 2 years is a difference. It's like, but he was in a fraternity that I joined. I went to a small school, liberal arts school in Texas. It was. These weren't national fraternities. These were local. I think they were distantly related to that stuff. But basically, they were drinking clubs, place and so we all had people to drink with and places to go. And but it was a wonderful experience and bonding experience. And he and I became friends fairly early on in the process, even when I was a freshman. And became closer friends later on, and grew up very different than me. Well, we have a lot of common family wise, but grew up different in Dallas, and was in the oil business. And he one of my favorite stories about Tom is that I have a lot of, we have nothing but drunk stories that basically we tell. It's like, but one of my favorite ones was one night we were drinking. Patrick's going to get on here in a little bit and say, don't tell your drunk stories. It's like, but he's not here right now. He's just listening. So get one in. It's like, so we're sitting around and we're drinking as much as we can possibly knock back. And he starts to tell me about seeing Don Ho in Honolulu. One time he's, Don Ho, Tiny Bubbles, it's like, so we got to drink some more. And I said, well, let's go. And because he had money, I didn't. It's like I had no money at all. But this is the generosity and the spontaneity of Wellfeld. And the memories I have of this are extremely vague. I do admit that. It's like they're foggy, but I do know that he, it didn't take much. He said, okay, let's go. So now that was like in 74, something like that. It's like that's 1974. But Some people might think it's 18 for us.
Yeah,
It's like, no, it was 1974. It didn't seem that long ago. We got the tickets that day. It was like we were day drinking then, and it was, and by the evening we had our tickets. We were in the Dallas airport, and taken off to Honolulu. He said, I tell you what, I said, I don't have any money. He said, you pay for your hotel and food, and I got everything else. So I went to my bank account, took every bit of money I had out. I mean, literally all of it. And said, let's go. And so we took off, and we were going to go for a day and then come right back. And of course we stayed 3 or 4 days. I think if we look back, we can see that, but it was, to me, that became the sort of a way of understanding or perceiving what that relationship was like. We were very different people in lots and lots of ways, but one of the things we have in common is that we really enjoy each other's company, and we would both rather laugh than anything, and we want fun, but what we talk about here on the podcast with this stuff is we were people who valued joy. As crazy as it was, as stupid as it was, as all the dumb stuff that there was, that I'm sure we didn't get to the airport without driving there. All of the stories, all of the vague memories that go with that particular trip, come rushing back to me today as I'm thinking about that, and just, tears in my eyes, and how much he has added to my life. Without internet, we didn't have internet. We got out of school, so we lost each other for many years.
Yes.
We reconnected in 2007, and have stayed in touch ever since. And it's been and very, very shortly, it stopped being about telling old stories, and it became about making new stories.
Yes.
And we've been making new stories since then.
Yes, that's so cool, isn't it? When that happens in a relationship.
Yeah.
No, there was a certain connection that you guys had that just was so meaningful for you, though.
Well, we have it. It's like, too, I always want to speak in the present tense too, because one of the things I said to him, or I think I said to his wife in the text I sent to her, is, the thing that I learned a long time ago, which is people die, but relationships don't, and that what I told her is, so I'll be, I don't know what happens when you die, but at least until that time, I'll be, totally in a relationship with him, and loving him and appreciating that, and having fond memories. And even, it's, you can bring it up to date. It's sort of like, because nowadays you and I are old enough to where we have more dead friends than we want, than we actually, and it's like, so, but I still have a present tense relationship with some of those guys. It's sort of like, oh, this is what my friend Bendel would say here. Yeah. This is, I know what so-and-so would do in this situation. And it's like, it feels really present. So anyway, my heart's heavy, but it's also a weird kind of, it's to do, it's without drugs. It's, I'm not on any, or I should say, I'm not on any drugs I'm not supposed to be on. And Dee calls it properly medicated. All the alcohol and drugs that are not supposed to be in my system are not, and the ones that are. It's like, but it's that when I realized we were doing our podcast today, it's like it put these two things in just the same field of vision. And I mean, you tell me what I'm saying, but it's like it's just beautiful.
What you're saying, and this is, I think, so important, is that, look, when someone is important to you, like he is obviously is to you,
yes.
You guys have all of these shared experiences. The grief you feel is a celebration of that relationship. It reflects how important he is to you. And the greater the pain, the greater the meaning. The more grief there is, the more important that person was in our life. And seeing, and I think it's so important that we don't run away from that, because it is a reflection of that relationship. I often think of it as an honoring of the relationship.
Yeah.
The grief is honoring what you guys have had, what you've shared together, and expressing it and talking about it and sharing it with us. I mean, So, this is the thing that I think people.
So it's part of the love. It is.
It is.
It's not separate from the love. It's part of the love.
It is exactly right, man. And see, loving hurts. Good loving hurts a lot. I mean, and we want the fun part of that, but this is the other part. I mean, if you open your heart up, as you say, you open your heart up to both sides. You're not just opening yourself up to the wonderful joy, the fun, the spontaneity, the craziness you guys have. I can see you guys. I had this vision. You guys are on the plane smoking cigarettes. You got your cocktail in your hand, and you're just cutting up on this plane.
It was a 747. There was a bar on this plane.
Oh,
it's
the bar.
I was sitting at the bar,
Of course, you guys flew first class. I mean, how could you not? Right?
Right. Exactly. Thank you. No, that's right. It's the grief is just a really tough part of love. But you know what? I think I tell you what I think that I'm getting right now as I'm presenting this sharing it to you and and many others. Hopefully, if they're listening, I mean, I think the sadness. I know the sadness and the hurt and the pain will come too. But it's like. There's something about putting it in this vision, this field of vision that I have, where I have my friends celebrating big changes, and somebody on their way wrapping their life up, their human life. It's like it feels okay.
Yeah, it's opposite sides of the same coin, right? I mean, is what you're really saying this is life. This is what we experience in our life. This is what happens. And, you've heard me say, if somebody comes into my office, says, well, can you help me? I want to be happy. Can you help me get happy in my life? I said, no. What do you mean? Why not? Why aren't you in the happy business? I said, I want people to be alive business. And that means you'll be happy at times. You'll enjoy your life more fully, etc. But there'll be also times like you're going through, Tom, where it's totally appropriate,
right,
to be melancholy, to be, reflecting on your life. The other thing about your relationship that I really think is pertinent to what we've been talking about, you didn't put a lot of expectations about what it should be like. You were together for a period of time, you drifted apart, you reconnected. It was like there was a rhythm to life that you were just present to with him and you flowed with.
Wow, that's exactly right. Because if you think about that, now I could get into the craziness of being 19, 20, 21 years old, and I'm sure I had all kinds of unemotional sobriety thoughts and stuff. But it's like, I think especially with relationships with my male friends, I think that's a really interesting observation, Alan. The expectations are quite simple.
They weren't they? I mean, look, you just said, hey, man, when it makes sense for both of us, let's connect. There was no demand. There was no, we should be doing this. I mean, even when you said, I didn't hear any remorse or regret that you hadn't connected sooner. This is just how things unfolded. And we just flowed with it.
Right. And technology put us back in touch. And it's like, yeah. And I do need to say this. Don Ho was, in fact, drunker than both of us. And he sang one verse of Tiny Bubbles and then he left. It's like,
and I'll tell you, the interesting thing is my brother-in-law who helped, write that
he wrote the song with us. I think
so. He was playing with Don Ho. He was on the stage with Don Ho, and he might have been on the stage.
Oh my God!
You were back there.
Kevin and I may have been in the same room.
That's right.
That's too cool. Well, the other piece about this is, and it's just that sort of existential fascination that we have anyway. So we're in one of the ways we look at this. We have in this story. There's three old guys. There's you, me, and Wellfelt, and it's like. We're each in a part of the story here that I'm telling from my perspective. It's like, but the other piece about this is about gratitude. Yeah. And the truth is, it's like any one of us could be in any one of these positions. I'm so happy that you're going through a life enriching experience in many ways and stuff. And it's like, and realize, okay, well, we don't ever need to take that for granted.
Yes.
Because either one of us could be where he is.
Yeah.
and we will be one day, some form or another. And it's like that such is life. I'll say this: I love you very much.
Well, I love you too, man, and I feel for you and what you're going through.
Mm.
You know, it's so interesting how our lives parallel so much through this whole thing, because I got a call not a call. I got an email this morning that the woman who hired me and brought me out to California in 1973. You met Felton.
Yeah.
So 73.
Well, I knew him in 73. So we were already drunk. We were already drunk by that time. Yeah.
73. Joan McCrae
Mm-hmm.
had heard I was a counselor at the Kaneohe Marine Corps Air Station, and she was trying to add an adolescent and pre-adolescent and family component to this outpatient program. She flew me out to interview me. They hired me, and I moved out to California in 73 to start working in the field while I was going to school to get my bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I just heard this morning is that, well, and I knew last week Joan had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
She's in her 80s now, and she hasn't been doing well. She's transitioning from this life to whatever is next for her. And so I got a call this morning and said that her daughter, Jacqueline, said the hospice nurse told us that it's not going to be long now. So after our podcast, one of the things I'll be doing tonight will be driving over to Joan's and saying my goodbye to her.
Oh.
And so it's so funny that our lives intersect again.
And amazing.
In these, I get goosebump in incredible ways, like when we did the workshop, like when COVID hit and we started talking, and then this happens, and now you're talking about your grief. I'm feeling my grief and my incredible gratitude to this woman to give this, Oh
my gosh, she changed your. I mean, there's so many different ways we could go. There's never just one way, but she changed your life. I mean,
I tried to get a job as a counselor when I was in Chicago at this place called Gateway. And I went and interviewed for them, and they looked at me and said, you are one arrogant little shit. So
they were perceptive.
They did get that right. They say, you got some balls coming here. You want to be a counselor. You got 6 months. You have no education. You're a high school dropout. And because you helped some people that came back from Vietnam, you think you could be a counselor in this program? And I go, did I miss something? It's like, of course I thought I could. I was doing a pretty good
and by the way, you were right. Yeah.
I mean,
I'd obviously like to point that out.
I'll tell you, I walked away from that saying, oh my God, man, I better take school seriously, because you need a ticket of admission to get into this club. And I certainly don't have it. Right. But then Joan gave me that opportunity. Before I had that ticket, all I needed to have to work for her was the fact that I was in recovery. I worked with some of the people she worked with, and they gave me a good recommendation.
Wow.
And
but you know what? How cool is that? Because all the whoever that was that tells you were an arrogant little shit, also, because when you said, and I don't know how all the neurons hooked up there for you, but it's like one of the things I know about you, I've joked with you about it, is you took your education a hell of a lot more seriously than I did. And it's like you did take your education seriously. And as a result, there is so much that there's a value there because of the work that you've done academically. And it's like, so that's one of those weird things where you go like, whoever calls you the arrogant little shit, well, he was part of the thing. He was part of the deal
part
too.
Of the story too. Oh, listen, I walked out of there and I was humiliated, but this is part of emotional sobriety, isn't it? I mean, even your story is you didn't have these expectations. You were living emotional sobriety without even knowing it. So was I, because I took that experience and I said, well, that's not going to define me. They told me what I need to do. I can use the information. I feel bad that I didn't get hired, but I'm off to school. I'm off to school. That's where I'm going. And when I moved out here, I had a scholarship at the University of Illinois Chicago Circle campus that I chose not to take because I wanted to work in the field while I was going to school.
And she was going to let you work. She was going to boots on the ground training. Absolutely.
Boots on the ground training. And I'm so grateful for that. But that's I'm
Oh
going to
wow!
be.
And so you're saying goodbye to her at the time that you moved out there because of the job, and you're saying goodbye to her as you leave
As I leave. How
and go
about
back
that?
east.
How about that? I came out here from the east. I go back to the
Mm-hmm,
east after saying
mm-hmm,
goodbye. It's like this whole thing is that whole. God, I didn't put it together like that, but this is
mm-hmm,
all. That's a completion, isn't it?
mm-hmm.
There's something.
There's
There's something
it's
complete about that. Wow.
yeah, and that's the place. That's one of the places where it's like, um, I always say, hindsight, accurate, decent hindsight, even maybe even helpful hindsight, insight, always comes from hindsight.
Yeah.
It's like we way overvalue our. This is one of the beliefs I have about myself and other folks I've talked with is we way overvalue our conscious mind. We think we think our brilliant insights are going to be what changes us. And they can help, but we talk about that all the time. Concepts are useless until we translate them to practice. That's one of the things we're working on with this podcast all the time. But the idea is, talk about letting go of expectations. The only way you can see these stories in our lives, and I mean, maybe it's important for us to see the stories, or maybe it's just some universal little benefit that says, well, this will entertain these people while they're doing this. They can tell stories about themselves that have little connections and circles and things like that. But but they feel meaningful, and the only way we get there is by really holding a loose reins.
You said something else, Tom, that really stood out that I want to highlight to everybody. When you were telling him that you were sending him these texts and you didn't get a respond, and you kept sending them. See, that's another element of emotional sobriety. You were doing what you needed to do, regardless of whether or not he was able and capable of responding to you at the time.
Right.
And like you said, if he was reading them, great. If they meant something to him, even better. But it also didn't matter, on the other hand, because you needed to say what you said to him. You needed to stay in contact with him, whether he was keeping in contact with you during that time. And that is so important in that, I remember a therapy session I was having with Dr. Kempler, and I was pissed off at a contractor and stuff. And I was on the phone with the guy and say, you said you're going to get these doors in, and now it's 3 friggin' months, and I got a plastic sheet in my living room, and I'm tired of this stuff. And the guy hung up on me. And Walter said to me, well, what did you do? Well, I hung up. He says, what did you hang up for? He said, you needed to keep talking. You needed to keep saying to him whatever you wanted to say. He says, that's your problem, Alan. You got to have the other person on the phone and listening to you to take care of your business. And I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. You mean I could keep? He said, of course, you had things to say, whether he was listening to you or not. The point is for you to say that stuff.
That is officially my favorite Kempler story. One of the things I tell people all the time that, when somebody has died, if we're doing some grief work in therapy, I'll say, do you still talk to them? And some people will just automatically say, well, yeah. And other people will look at you like, what's great? Go like, because they think you're supposed to stop.
What are you doing?
It's like, yeah, it's like, no, it's like, you're not done. The relationship goes on. You have things to say.
I think you guys have been touching on versions of an answer to this question for the entire hour, but I just wanted to get this in here, is that my dad's best friend just turned 80, and he has been having a lot of mobility issues. And my dad told me that he brought him a walking stick, like a special walking stick to help him get around. And, my dad's been experiencing some cognitive decline and, some issues that I can tell that he's dealing with a lot of like existential terror at, what lies ahead. And I guess my question to you guys is, where does emotional sobriety come in when dealing with these questions of mortality and aging? And, there's no one simple answer, but, how has it been coming up, especially as it pertains to these loved ones of yours that you've been discussing?
Well, first of all, I think that, I start saying that's an episode unto itself, but I think it's a podcast unto itself. But it's No, I like the question because one of the things for me is it's like that it's part of it all. I mean, one of the things that my friend Wellfelt and I have talked about and through the years is, is just the question of what do you think happens when you die? Now we can be pretty fucking funny about it when we're talking about the things, and we both have the paperwork in to have 2 more lifetimes together if there's reincarnation, and that's but it's like no, but there's a lot of seriousness in those conversations that we've had, and I shared a little bit that with his wife when she texted that he and I had talked about that, and I was saying that we hadn't figured it out, but it's, I mean, to me, what it does is it just makes everything, and I mean this this is a word that kind of has a negative connotation, but it makes everything more urgent in the sense of living in the moment, appreciating what we have, and just being aware that this is life, and like I was saying, makes me focus more on loving you and Alan as we're sitting here having this conversation as we do this, and grateful that we're the 3 of us are sitting here and healthy, and knowing that we're not always going to be.
How do we face aging, right, and growing older and losing some of our abilities? Because there's no question that with aging, certain things decline. Like, you see with your father, right, that his memory is declining. Mm-hmm. If I gave somebody an adult intelligence test, the same number of questions somebody would need to answer to get an IQ of 120 when you're 30 are decreased when you're 70 or 80. So if you needed, let's say, 20 questions correct, let's say to get that 120 when you're 30, you need 10 when you're 70 or 80, right? Because they adjust it to our decline. There's a normal neuropsychological decline in our functioning. Our memories don't work as well. Our speed of our computational speed, processing speed, all of that slows down. But here's what I think a lot of people forget. While, aging is going to create a decline, there's a part of us that can continue to grow and maybe better than ever before.
Absolutely.
Because we can't rely on our physical and mental. We not have to, but we have an invitation to look at things spiritually. Mm-hmm. And now at that stage of life, while the bodies we're housed in are declining, our spiritual life and connections can grow like they've never grown before, because we start to move beyond materialism, right? We move beyond this material world as, living in a material world, as George Harrison told us, right? Living in a material world. Well, that changes as you get older. You're now living in a spiritual world if you take that direction. And that's an interesting thing, because every man is going to hit a point in their life where everything that we were doing before, that we were basing our sense of self on, is no longer available like it was. My ability to write or think or whatever it is, whatever my sense of self was anchored in, is going to change. And there's 3 ways that guys respond to this, Patrick. One is guys deny it, and they put on the purple robe. At 80 years old, they do a commercial for Viagra, and they come down and introduce everybody to their 21-year-old girlfriend. Hugh Hefner is a great example of that. We call it the Peter Pan syndrome. I don't want to grow up. And he just denies what's happening in his life, and he's going to continue to be Peter. Other guys, they see this happening, and they become curmudgeons. The icon of that is Ebenezer Scrooge.
I was going to say Walter Matthau.
Walter. That's exactly a good example. Right now, we become these bitter old men. The first one, we become these foolish old men. Or now we become these bitter old men. And then some men choose the third alternative, or the third possibility, which is to take the journey down. and to start deconstructing our life that was based on a certain set of ideas and principles and the man rules. But I think that this subject would be worthy of a whole show.
Yeah, because one of the things you're talking about is you know when you I mean it just came alive in me when you said, you know, some things, you know, with the decline of all these other things, some things are better than ever. It's like, and I'm pretty sure the only way you get to really know about this stuff is because you live long enough to feel it, to experience it. It's like, other than the fact that I, you know, that I really don't want to be interrupted by death, and you know, because I'm having a good time in life. It's like I would be shocked if I went back in time and tell my younger self. It's like, I love being 67 years old. It's like, you know, I'm better. I really am better than I've ever been. And it's like, and it's really interesting when you're saying that about the ideas, like, okay, well, so what are you in denial of the decline? So like, I don't think so. No, I think that, you know, I'm sure I am. I'll find those things along the way too. But the idea is it is a deeper experience. And I want to just go back and just say something, Patrick, that it may seem like a smaller thing, but maybe it doesn't. But here's what I love about what you talked about with your dad and his friend. I love that your dad got him the walking stick. I love the fact that we can, you know, because men, you know, notoriously are not good at supporting each other and being real. Yeah. It's like just doing something as simple as that is cool. That's the perfect place for that stick to come from his good friend. It's like, here, you might need to lean on this. You know,
he's very thoughtful.
I love that.
Man. And that's you, Patrick. I see that in you too, man. You have that thoughtfulness. And you right on, Tom. And look what you said before.
I look back at the books that I have written in the past, and through the lens of emotional sobriety. And I love the fact that you pointed out when we were telling the story the other night at your book release Zoom party, that the time we met, I mean, we met before, but the time we did that accidental workshop the first time, you said, "Hey, Tom, that was actually emotional sobriety on your part, because you just kind of let go of what, you know, what the expectation was and joined in and did this." And I love that. But I'm reading my stuff through these lenses and going, wow. This really is the path I've been on for a long while. And it's like, it just seems like, you know, knowing you, working with you is putting that together for me in a way that I've never had it before.
Yeah. So I love it, man. I mean, I seen that, and I love how that's all kind of, you know, coming together for you, because it's doing the same thing for me. I mean, I look at some of the stuff I was thinking about earlier. I didn't have the framework I have today to be able to integrate these thoughts and ideas and experiences. And it does really make a lot of sense. And just one more thing before we end this show, you know, every person's life is worth a novel. There's no question about it. You know, there are millions and millions of novels can be written. And that's what I love what you did when you shared us a few chapters from your novel, when you were talking about Wellford and your relationship with him and the trip to Hawaii. It's etched in my consciousness now. Yep. I can see you guys sitting up at that bar, getting hammered and having a hell of a time as you go, and not knowing what the hell is going to happen when you get there. And it didn't matter.
Didn't care.
You were totally living in the here and now. I mean, you were totally living in the here and now.
Yep. Yeah. We didn't even come home when we were supposed to come home. We just didn't come home.
No, you're flowing. You just didn't come home. I mean, but there was a spontaneity to that. There was a lot of, you know, when you look at that, you know, you see there's elements of a well-lived life, even in those times in our life, even during those periods of time.
No, what you just said about the writing and stuff, like it fits with the life experiences too, is we have a framework that I realize, and I'm not claiming to know that think that there's an order in the universe that makes this on purpose, but you're right. We look back and we have a place to put these things now.
Yes.
It's like, oh wow, this thing, because you could be talking about emotional sobriety, and in my mind goes to something I wrote in Earning Your Own Respect or Self-Forgiveness Handbook, and I go, oh, that's where that goes. That's what that is. It's like, and I love the fact that stuff is I mean, and this is one of the things that you and I always talk about in this process is how we have this in common. We're just fascinated by what we do and the fact and grateful that we get to do this for a living. It's amazing.
Right on. So true. And I really enjoy the tapestry of emotional sobriety you and I are creating. I said that in my introduction the other day, is that, you know, I'm weaving this tapestry, but I'm not doing it alone, man. There's a lot of threads that you put into this tapestry that we're weaving together, is the way I think about it. And this podcast is a real testimony to how even that changed from start right here to what are we doing? Let's just call it emotional sobriety, which is what
let's call it what it is. That's right.
And that's what you said. We just need to pivot on this thing, Al. Come on. We're talking about this all over the place. How come we're not bringing that into our podcast, which we did? And I'm so grateful for. Tom, great show today. I feel your loss. I feel what you're going through, man. I'm here for you. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much for being there.
Love you, Tom.
Thank you, Patrick.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.